I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Salem High School Building Committee meeting. Today is the 19th of December, 2023, Friday night. At this time, I'd like to move approval of the minutes from the September 25th meeting. Can I get a motion? Motion made by the mayor. Second? Second. Any questions, comments, concerns about the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, given that we are a little bit past time, we're going to try to move this right along. Next, we're going to start with a master facility plan presentation by Paul Mills from Canada Design. Paul, I believe you've allotted 20 to 25 minutes for you. Okay. And I'm a stickler for time, so okay. I'm going to apologize in advance if you go over.
So we just lost our little warm-up activity. I was going to ask a few questions with the live poll sort of thing. We can see all the responses on the screen. I just want to get a general sense here. Who here has been in the school this school year before tonight? Just about everybody. If not, maybe over the last 2 years or so. Okay, one or two. Anyone first time here? Okay, so this is home for you guys. You know this place. How familiar are you with the facility master plan that was completed in 2022? Okay, give me 5 fingers if you actively were participating in the process, 3 fingers if you learned about it after the fact, and 1 finger if you're not very familiar with it. Okay, I'm seeing 5 ones, a couple newbies. Okay, this helps me kind of speed along here. So I'm going to quickly go through how we got here today, kind of explain what the FMP was and some of the decision making that was put into it along with what we heard from your community. We're going to quickly go over all the FMP recommendations, of which this is one of the projects, but this will give you a little bit of context to wrap around that. And Lisa and I have been talking a little bit about it. She's going to be talking a bit about implementation, but I've got a little bit of overview slides on time frames and that sort of thing. So this booklet here with some of your students, I believe that's out at Carlson. That's Horseman. Gotcha. Thank you. Are on the cover, and we went through this process where we had several. It's probably hard to see here. We've got principles, data, options, decisions, and actions. I'm not going to walk you through the whole process, but it was more than just looking at the buildings. We questioned the district design, how many schools there are, what size they are, where they're located. We even looked at policies. We have choice policy for enrollment here, and we really were charged by Dr. Reich and the school committee to turn over all the rocks and consider responsibly all futures that can be in order to design what kind of investments want to be made in the buildings that will stand the test of time, like many of the buildings that are still in service here, like Collins and Saltonstall, that have been around for over 100 years. Right? So we had active participation with what we call the District Planning Committee, the DPC, as well as the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. So it's internal and external partners that weighed in through a structured process. And we're pleased with the amount of results we had. We had over 600 stakeholders engaged in the process, including through surveys. We had a number of planning workshops, as well as times that we worked out in the community, like 40+ hours. And we went through a bunch of different permutations. We looked at a whole bunch of data, and I'm not going to walk you through all the details of this, but I want to give you a flavor of the sorts of things that helped inform some of the recommendations that were put forward. This here is years. This is grades from pre-K through 12, and the redder is the larger the numbers, the blacker or the smaller the numbers, and you can see generally like bubble-like kids that matriculate through the system, and we can kind of see a general trend downward in enrollment. This leads up to the time of the pandemic. You can see the annual growths in red, drops in black, but in general we saw looking at a declining enrollment trend. We also saw that there was a bit of a shelf here after the 5th grade, that there were, it appeared, students that are voluntarily opting out. So we need to consider these in terms of a strategy. How might we design a school system that can help curb the loss of students, because dollar signs come from students, which gives you the resources to offer a great program. We studied your school population's demographics and looked at how we went from 53% Anglo populations to 43% in, let's see, that is a 10-year time frame. I imagine that trend is continuing to diversify quite a bit more. We benchmarked every school. We saw kind of a percent of Anglo versus others, and I know that it almost comes from a perspective that's antithetical to diversity, but it's one way of measuring it. And we wanted to see how the schools were tracking over time. And we looked at the internationalization of your students that are here. You know that we have a little map here. We've got Dominican Republic, Brazil, Honduras. You have a number of students from there. And these populations come with a lot of needs that I was really happy to hear when describing the health center that we have on campus. And certainly something that as you move forward with new plans for a school, that those vital programs continue. We looked at capacity utilization. And these fancy numbers here and stuff like that are basically saying, well, we have blue, that's empty seats in a way, or we have red, those are areas where it's a little bit crowded. And virtually at every school, we were looking at capacity underutilization, right? So Collins, we were at 59% capacity utilized, trending down to less than half full, right? We're at 42% here at this school, trending down south of 40% utilized. Now I understand that we've had a bit of pickup in the last couple of years, which is awesome. This work was completed about 18 months ago. So really happy to hear that we kind of hit perhaps bottom of that trough, but it did speak to what kind of facility options were in front of us. We looked at the physical health of all of the various systems. There was a previous study that we validated in the field, and we also looked at the educational programs, and we kind of benchmarked good, fair, poor, and we looked at budget figures, which was dozens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to be reinvested in these facilities, even if we didn't change anything as far as the organization of the school system and design. We looked at transportation. These are the home, the dots where the students live versus where they went to school. So we had a couple slides. We looked at Bates, there's Bentley and Carlton. So you can see a lot of kids that might be living in each other's areas, high-fiving each other on the way to school, but maybe on the way home as well. All right, this is school choice in action, which comes with value, and it is, we know through surveys and through anecdotes and stories that that is something that's very appreciated in this community by many, but also comes at a cost. Right? Consider the transportation costs for moving kids all around and congestion in the streets. Here's the same for Horseman, Witchcraft Heights, and the Early Childhood Center over by Bentley. Here's the same for Sultan Stalls, middle school students, as well as the ones in Collins and high school. All of this to say we were analyzing this, and I have a little bit of crowd participation here. Here's a question for you. Guess the number of student miles traveled from home to school in Salem per day. I need a volunteer. Dr. Zeit said I could pick on someone.
3,460.
All right, 3,460. Someone want to take the over or the under on that?
Under.
Under? Oh, all right, what's your guess for over?
6,300.
6,300. I need someone to step up and get a little higher.
Wow. 8,000.
8,000, come on, a little higher, so we can do better than that, come on.
15,000.
15,000, okay. Well, it's about 12,000 student miles traveled each and every day from home to school. Now, some of those are on routes and students are collected, so that isn't exactly car miles, but it does speak to the amount of traffic that's being put and what that translates into cost, as well as impacting the environment and just general livability and transportation. And by the way, that adds up to 2.3 million student miles traveled in a year. And for a town as small as Salem's, that's rather interesting, right? So we looked at a lot of that stuff. We also looked at resiliency. We do know that sustainability, you're at ground zero for it, and that it is a shared core value of your school system and city. We did look at sea level rise, for instance. Here's some projections from a study that we found that suggests kind of a median range of 2 to 4 feet of sea level rise within the century, right? This is real. We looked at the maps and saw where those flood ranges could go. So kind of the bright yellow is that high end of 4 feet, but the high end of their study curves also show as high as 5 and 6 feet. You can see where it touches on where the schools are, right? So here's Bentley with the ECC right beside it. Where's Sultan Stalls normal shoreline. If we're starting to forecast out, the stuff's real, and it really informed, if we're gonna make capital investments into your facilities, we might want to be smart. These buildings will stay in place for many decades, and we don't want to put something that's gonna be underwater. I also want to speak to some opportunities for funding from the feds from FEMA's hazard mitigation programs. Let's see, we looked at hurricane risk and a bunch of numbers here, basically saying that it has been on the rise, and we do know that there have been a couple near misses that we've had in recent years, and something to consider. But here are the percent of the square feet of the parcels that are occupied by 3 of your schools in a category 1, 2, 3, and 4. How much of the parcel would be wet? So category 3, Bentley, 100%. It's a lot of water, and probably some in the building at that point, right? Also, let's see, Carlton gets up to 100% at category 4. But all this stuff helped inform some of our design thinking when we looked at what we call draft options. So we sat in this room here, and as a committee, dreamed up all the sorts of different scenarios. What might want to be in the future for this school system in light of all that data that we were looking at. And everything was on the table, everything from new schools to reconstructing new programs, changing the grade configurations, meaning what grades go to what schools. Even policy was considered, even closing and consolidating. There were things that were on the table when we explored. And we came up with this whole slate of different options that were out there. The first was around operational scenarios, which I will talk about, high schools, which I will talk about, and a bunch of other stuff around alternative ed, preschool, opportunities, elementary, and school placement policy. So we looked at for your grade configuration and how you're going to organize in the future. As a school system, we looked at status quo. We have these little graphic parties so you can kind of see, more or less the difference between them. Here's Salem Stall, right? There's Collins, you can kind of see your progression from pre-K up through high school. In your current model, we looked at the relative costs in terms of one-time upfront capital costs you have to spend, but also more importantly, each and every year, what the town has to put up to operate the school buildings. And this is in Yelp style relativity, right? So it's kind of like the $1 or $2 sort of thing just to help folks get around it. And we looked at benefits and challenges with each. So we also looked at what if we were to go normalize at a pre-K through 5 elementary school model, which really speaks directly to the salt and stall exception that you have. A number of benefits surrounding the notion that it's a very walkable school. A lot of students that can't get to it because it's full. And that has very small cohorts at the middle school level, which could be limiting on the sorts of curriculum that could be offered for those students. But we did hear from community how they liked the smallness, and despite some of the issues relative to curriculum, that perhaps that was a model and way to go. So that was explored as well. We looked at, hey, what if we went salt and stall everywhere, but not salt and stall size schools. These would be sized more along the lines that would give you that scale to offer curriculum at a scale like you do at Collins or the middle school level. You'd probably have 3 elementary schools in the same high school, that's it. And perhaps a pre-K sort of model. So we explored that. And we looked at one actually that we wound up recommending, and that was to normalize around a pre-K through 6 elementary school model. That would matriculate to facility probably here. That would be 7 through 12, which is different than the way you operate now, right? So Collins wouldn't be a middle school in that sort of scenario. That's kind of a big, big change, right? And that sort of trade-up was kind of predicated on the mission, yeah, if we can get the money to really build the right size, proper program for it. So we explored all this stuff, we did a bunch of surveying around it. Here is the site where we are. You can see the site, that's where the buildings are. And I don't know if we pointed out the Mason-Dixon line between the original part of the building this way, right? And the 2000, some people that were describing it a second ago, that it finished 2008 timeframe. So this academic half of the building was renovated recently, right? That's darn near 20 years ago when the renovation happened on that half of the building. Here's Soberna's auto program that we were talking about, the new installations there. And we have some of the farm activity that I'm guessing is down here.
Right next to it, the green little, right at the Salerno sign.
To the left? To the right of the, that little green speck.
Right there, yeah.
Okay. Got it. So this gives you a sense of what the facilities are. And when we're sorting through what might this look like, we considered what modern school design might want. And one thing that this building kind of was hinting at, even back in the 70s, was the notion of having these shared spaces that are surrounded by classrooms, which allows for collaborative instruction to happen, interdisciplinary instruction, and for project-based learning, small group activities, interventions, enrichments, all those sorts of things that want to happen. Right now, you're chopped up in little walls as opposed to having big open spaces. And we looked at your existing floor plans here, and this is nothing super dramatic, we weren't doing design work at the time, but we saw that there was a lot of potential in your floor plans here. If there were a renovation scenario, which I know the MSB would be happy to because there's a lot less money involved, but we could be done some rather dramatic upgrades to the building where we could carve out some spaces that would have those sorts of flexible spaces that most modern schools today have on one part of the building, and perhaps an addition on top of it, or perhaps replacing the part that never got renovated. So there's a lot of potential here within the walls. So we looked at scenarios where it could be renovated in place, demolished and rebuilt, which is what was recommended, and then perhaps even incorporating Horace Mann School, which is right across the parking lot and kind of drips down to Wilson Street, down the gate. Perhaps that could be part of a campus that would have some programs. At the end of the day, it was recommended for reconstruction here. Now, when you go through the process with the MSBA and go through feasibility studies and try to come up with your preferred schematic designs, maybe some renovation might still be on the table. This was just a way for us to frame the conversation with the community, build a case for this, and demonstrate that case successfully as Dr. Drake and his team, Mary Delay and others, to secure funding. It's hard to believe it's a year ago already. All right? Okay, so it can manifest itself in a number of ways on the campus, which leads us to the recommendations of the FMP. How am I tracking on time?
You've got 9 minutes.
Cool. All right, so we kind of have this time scale. I'm going to walk you through the different points and kind of the pages from the FMP document. So as far as, we call it educational strategy, but the whole educational strategy around a strategic grade reconfiguration. Getting, moving in steps towards that pre-K through 6 model, 7 through 12. There was a lot of calculus behind the design of that for a number of reasons. Educationally, there were a lot of proponents for 6th grade being the nice break point, that they do well modeling down to youngers, and there's research to support that. There's also research to support different corollaries and stuff as well, so we're not like pushing this is the only way. One strategic element, remember I was showing you that declining enrollment? Well, at the same time, while enrollment's been going down in Salem, your charter school in the area has been going up. The regional voc tech school, while you're not the only contributor to their success, but they've been growing up from yours and other district communities in the area at the very same time. By looking at a grade configuration of pre-K through 6 and 7 through 12, it's almost like playing chess with these folks in a way. You got 6th graders where you have the option to go to a charter school, but my buddies are staying here. We know our teachers. We know the caring adults that are in these facilities here. I can hang on for another year. But guess what? By then, well, now we're excited to go to this brand new building that's built here. So a lot of calculus around the educational and just more or less operational strategy to recruit and retain students and staff in the model. That's the big frame of it, and we looked at salt install perhaps as an early step towards that, because when we get into the timelines of this isn't going to happen next year. This is going to take 6, 7 years or so. I hope everyone's braced for that kind of timeline. The MSBA process does have a lot of steps, and design and construction does take time. And to do something that's going to be transformative, you want to invest a good amount of time to make it great. We looked at salt install perhaps as an opportunity to maybe do that grade configuration. Remember that one scenario we looked at? Maybe we move towards that sooner rather than later, which leads you in towards your end state. And then programming activities, which leads to the new grade configuration. The next block is around this project here, which involves the SOI process, which you successfully went through last year, and are stepping into full gusto into next year, but all the sort of programming and design work, not just for the building, but also the awesome work that you guys are doing with your CTE programs and early education programs and stuff, that can persist and be infused into the new design. We looked closely at your alternative education. This is Salem Prep and Liberty, thank you, down at the mall. Are they still there? I remember they were kind of troublesome landlord at the time. And we looked at perhaps maybe they want something different. Right? We do know that there's the notion of having ties to the senior high school is important in terms of curriculum and opportunities, but separation and distance so that the students that really want to thrive in the general environment have that space and safety, right? And we looked at where might that new home be if it's not at the mall. Hopefully things have gotten a little bit better. We knew it was kind of troublesome back in the days. But those are vital programs, and speaking very personally from my own family situation, I cherish those kind of programs and how they can change lives for families. Early Learning Center, the other thing we talked about, whether it's pre-K or pre-K through K even, which, full transparency, my kids came up through a model like that and really worked well for them. I liked the kindergarten students not being little babies on the elementary campus, but modeling big kid behavior to the pre-K is kind of neat. My kids model. But right now you have that at Bentley. And might that want to be in a new facility or something else, but we prescribe some continued study in that space and where that might want to be. The reimbursability for pre-K is another question too. It might be something that's solely borne by the town, which can be expensive. We looked at sustainability, being a big thing, and to look at performance-based contracting, opportunities like you've already got some great solar panels up on Collins and some here and
Collins also,
yeah, okay. Awesome, because it's not only allows you to reinvest the dollars you're otherwise spending on utilities into the classroom where it really wants to be. It creates educational opportunities for students like we saw downstairs with the monitors and stuff. So cool. But our recommendations were to continue just building, putting steroids on that awesome work that had already been started under leaders like Jen Hyatt when she was in the city. And finally, prioritize renovations. This is really taking care of business. Now we do know that it's going to take some time to get to some of these capital projects. Here, if we're looking at 6-7 years, that's a generation of students, 2 generations of students almost that are going to come through here. We've got to serve them as well. We can't just turn off the faucet and say, no, let's save every cent we can. We've got to continue, and I'm so pleased to see the improvements that you continue to do at this school because your students deserve it. But this is a general way of saying we've got to take care of our buildings and look at your priority list of schools and think long-term in terms of sea level rise and other things as part of it. So all of this frames, more or less, all the various recommendations that we put forward in the FMP. This speaks to the implementation. Let's see. So this photograph here is from a workshop we did with the school committee. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. Elizabeth, do you remember when that was? It was towards the summer, so I want to say like June of
I actually think it was
22.
October of 22.
Okay. Thank you for correcting my memory. We went through all these different scenarios. It's been some time since this has been published and presented to them in a public forum, and it was Drs. Wright and Elizabeth were like pushing for, okay, we want to start seeing some action here. So what are we going to move forward with? So we helped facilitate a conversation with the school committee members and put forward all those scenarios and options in front of them to remind them what was there. And we asked them to consider either let's adopt it, let's amend it, let's study it, or table it all together. And more or less, all these different options were put forward for adoption, including the new Salem project, alternative education. There's a flag for stay or new lease, so consideration of where they are. There's one on the operational scenario, some folks that are very, very concerned about 6th grade and where they might fall, whether towards elementary. High school to flag that, hey, let's not lock ourselves into necessarily 7 through 12. Let's move forward methodically, and as we design this building and do programming and engaging further with community and staff, We just determine where the sixth graders might want to go. Let's see here. Salt and stall is kind of a, let's study that. Right? Let's consider maybe we make some changes there sooner rather than later. And then on school placement policy, in the choice policy, that was something also at that point in time, the school committee said, you know, that's something we need to study. I'm not sure where those initiatives stand, if they've moved forward at all. But that frames more or less the conversation we left off with your school committee and leadership. Okay, any questions? That's the FMP, more or less, what led us to where we are today, this project.
Questions?
Yeah, is there any consideration of bringing Salem Prep and New Liberty into the same building as the high school?
That was discussed.
Salem Prep cannot be brought in to the way that it's, I don't want to say charter, but the application was that it has to be in a separate location from, because it's a therapeutic, so it cannot be in the same location. It's not a good practice to have the alternative high school, also New Liberty, in the same place, because for kids who didn't necessarily have a good experience and need a new experience, co-location, would be problematic in the way that New Liberty was also designed as well. But we did talk about looking at other spaces. If this facility becomes a 7 to 12, then it would cause some shifting in the district, and there might be space for New Liberty and Prep to be located somewhere else, not at the high school campus, but somewhere else in the district where we would have vacant, we'd have space for them. 'Cause right now we pay for a lease.
There was consideration of elementary school consolidation. There is a little bit in aggregate, some surplus capacity, and on paper, you could probably close one of your elementary schools and fill them up just a little bit further. But you're not at a point where you have grossly underutilized facilities. Having walkable schools tucked in your communities and neighborhoods like they are was something that was too valued to consider consolidating them. But in a scenario where we discussed whether maybe if one of those were repurposed, it could become a new one for something like Salem Prep and New Liberty, Collins Middle School perhaps, and right now you have administration there. And big, beautiful facility that clearly is going to be around forever. Maybe the program could be located there, but Dr. Zach was saying to be determined, but co-location was pretty much taken off the table.
By the way, thank you for the presentation. What, if any, input does the Mass School Building Association have on the direction we're going? In other words, it looked like we had this group that got together and they settled on total demolition. But does the MSBA come in and take a look at things and say, well, no, you don't necessarily need a demolition, you just need a, I don't know, renovation? What do they do? What's the stance on that?
Steve, or Lisa, you want to jump on that? I think I know the answer, but I don't want to speak contrary because I've been a party to this conversation.
I mean, my sense is that that's going to be part of the feasibility conversation. I think they're open to all possibilities now. So I think they're going to want to, hear what this group has to say. We're going to have to make some decisions of looking at the different options. But what this building committee says is going to loom large. And if this committee wants to go in a direction, I think they'll be supportive of that, as long as there's buy-in from folks who are part of the community. I don't know, is that a different answer than you would have, Paul, or other people?
Yeah, it was to be determined. There will be an analysis. There's this process here that I think Lisa might have shared with you before that walks through. I dropped this in, there we go. Dropped it in there as much to try to kind of convey, we're talking about a long time frame, right? But there is a point where the feasibility study happens and they have what they call the preferred schematic design. So you'll explore, just like we did at a high level master planning scale, then it's more about the project, and there will be probably 3 different scenarios and 4 different permutations of each of those. And you'll have a lot of options to consider and weigh the pros and cons, the costs associated with it. I believe your participation from the state is around half-ish or so of the overall capital project.
We'll see a little bit more. shifting. It's changing.
We're getting too rich here. Property values too high. But anyway, it's a significant proportion, and clearly they're going to want to see some sense of economies. We do see potential in this side of the building, and if you were to add that way, perhaps there could be a lot of exciting outcomes. This one, I don't know if that's a goner or, you know, there's just a lot of really baked-in design concepts that are questionable, at least in today's modes of instruction, right, to consider. So that would be determined in the future.
Well, can I just jump in there for a second? I mean, a couple of things to just think about here is I want this committee to consider what input we got from the community during this process. But it also suggests, and a couple of things that loom large, there is a strong movement around thinking about middle school and high school being co-located. That there was a sentiment of that just because of our size. Not that everybody agreed universally, but there was some discussion about that and leveraging resources. The Early Childhood Center being a separate entity was strong then and has gained even more momentum because people want to see all the youngest learners in one place. We do have them scattered right now, pre-K students in different, and obviously kindergarten is scattered out throughout the city as well. So that's just something to consider. And then we've obviously got the New Liberty and Salem Prep facilities to consider. I do think, though, that a lot has changed even from this presentation. 2 years is an eternity, and we're going to have to do some re-engagement with the community as we look at the feasibility options to resurface some of these conversations probably in the next year or so once we start looking at the options. I would also encourage you to tap your own stakeholder groups to get their input on this. We don't want to make decisions in a vacuum. That's why we do have a good representation, I think, from the community. But part of our role is to begin engaging around some of these recommendations that came out from a few years ago, just to see how people, what the sentiment is about some of these really important decisions that are not just about having a new building here, but are about the entire portfolio of the Salem Public Schools, because this has an impact on every level in our schools. So I just want to make sure that you're all, as you go into the holiday season and you're talking to your friends and singing Christmas caroling with people, you can bring up some of these themes with folks.
Can I just expand on that? That also, there was a lot of public engagement into the facility master plan, so we're not starting from scratch. I mean, a lot of time has passed, things have changed, enrollment is a little bit up.
It's up, yeah.
But I think that the degree of public input that went into the development of this plan is valuable. So it's something that gives us a strong starting point from. Yeah.
We do have a dashboard on our website. I'll send the links to you guys after this, but where you can actually engage with some of that survey findings and slice and dice it by different communities or your relationship or role to the district, ethnicities, all those sorts of things are all baked in. Just kind of, I don't know, I'm a data guy, so I like to play around with that stuff, and it can help maybe inform some of that stuff we can move forward.
Jenna?
Oh, I was just going to follow up on it. I mean, when we did this, it's really to make sure that before we went into this process and what the MSBA, what we understood they wanted was us to look big and let the whole district not just focus constantly. We had tried to get funding for the high school renovation second part for years and not been successful. So I think looking larger with the understanding of all these other things need to happen too. But I think, when we get into the process, when you go through these processes, technical issues, we've got a ton of ledge around here, we've got a complicated building, not sure what we can do or carve out or not, and costs are going to drive a lot of things. So there may be an option that everybody wants, but the cost may be something that the community's not willing to accept, so we may have to make those decisions. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that all pans out, particularly, as costs with inflation and everything else, we're in a very difficult cost environment. So I think it's good for us to be thinking creatively about how we can solve problems and sort of looking at the larger.
I want to be clear, when I asked the question, it wasn't because I didn't agree with the consensus. I was just asking, because I know sometimes a higher authority may have a different opinion, so.
Yeah, and there is the town share that you have to pay as well as how much on top of all the other municipal priorities that are out there can we afford to put towards it. And with cost in mind, I did have a couple other slides about other sources of funding.
We've got a good 10 minutes, so we have a good 10 minutes for Q&A, so.
Okay, cool. There's another program, the core program is the one that you apply to with MSBA. That's for major renovations and replacements or new schools. There's also something they call the ARP, Accelerated Repair Program. It's targeted investments. Really, it started with the Green Building Initiative, I think they called it originally. But it was around trying to tighten up the envelope, take care of roofs and HVAC systems. That's where most of the money for utilities is flying out the door. There's a lot that still is in place. They hit pause on the HVAC part right now because they are reconsidering ground source heat pumps and getting more sustainable. And they want to pilot a couple of projects for more sustainable actions. And perhaps when we get to renovating your other schools, that there'll be in place better opportunities with the ARP. There's federal dollars available to you with the Inflation Reduction Act that can be transformative to be able to offset and really change the balance sheet on time scale and payback on these sorts of investments. The incentives are designed well to make it just obvious choices to go towards more sustainable options that are out there. With Mass Save, there's, through utility, there's some opportunities there to get rebates and stuff. A little bit smaller in scale, but this money, it's just a matter of taking the time and discipline to identify.
Hold right there for a second, Paul. This is for Z. So we just took a tour and we saw some of the equipment is end of life or doesn't communicate. So can we use any of these programs to?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Good, okay, thanks.
Let's see.
In fact, they've got new boilers at Bethany. Who they are.
Yeah. Should have given you props to start with. But here's the deep energy retrofit. It's a different flavor of it, but a lot of stats about it. I'm not going to walk you through a bunch of it, but some competitive funding opportunities are out there through the Department of Ed, federally, as well as some state opportunities for if you were to consider one of the sites maybe as a point of refuge. In emergency opportunities, there's some funding sources for that. There's a bunch of different ways to kind of find some pennies that are out there to help put together a bigger, better program for your projects. Anyway, wanted to make sure hit on the cost stuff because Jen was pointing at, yeah, we might have more of an appetite than we have budget for, but there might be ways to close that gap.
Other questions? One place. All right, thanks, Paul, appreciate it. Now we're gonna move on, we're gonna, want to debrief the tour. So, how much to say, well, actually, maybe there's a lot to say. It was my first time taking a pretty comprehensive tour of the building. And one thing is for sure, we need a new building. But I would like either Z or Mario or Glenn just to talk about kind of some of the challenges. I mean, there are some challenges, and they're only going to get worse. So any of you can speak to it. And for those of you who didn't have an opportunity to go on the tour, we didn't get to see it all. We may want to set up another one because I didn't realize how dire some of the areas actually are. So
I think a lot of the challenges that is, we face is, we want to implement better programs and better facilities for our staff and students, and we do hit roadblocks a lot with the asbestos in the buildings, with the failing infrastructure, the outdated electrical infrastructure. So that's one thing where we kind of, not butt heads, but contrast with.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what Z is saying, I think some of the things, the upgrades that we want to make, we can't always make, and I don't think all the stakeholders understand why we can't make those upgrades. But also just looking at our programs, as the enrollment has grown, the space isn't growing. The space was never meant, many of our spaces were never meant for the programs that we've now installed in them. And we don't necessarily have the room or the space for either the tools that the kids are going to use or to have the kids and the tools in the same space.
Yeah, that's particularly true in a lot of our shops. We have to really be aware of how many kids are in there. For example, CTE has hour requirements, and I have to be able to meet those hour requirements by shifting a group of seniors out of certain classes so I can get my exploratory kids into there because I can't have 36 kids in space. The ceiling heights in most of our shop spaces are too low to have proper ventilation, or set up any large-scale equipment that we could put our hands on. So it's very limiting to what we can do. And we've gotten creative, thanks to Z and his staff, the support of the district, in taking spaces and creating different spaces, but that only goes so far. I mean, even our culinary space is limited up there. I mean, it's very new, it's all state-of-the-art equipment, but there are limitations. There is no ventilation, there's no fryolator, there's no hood to connect to, so there are some limitations.
And then just our English, math, science classrooms, they're very typical configurations, and that's just not what we do. So doing group work, stationing, putting stations in for our kids has been difficult because of the size of the rooms, and there's not a uniform size in this school. You have classrooms where you can very easily like put a bunch of desks together and do group work with a typical classroom of 24 kids, and then there are other ones you are not going to put those desks together because the kids are going to be on top of each other, and that's really difficult. As far as also our science labs and the upgrades, while we have some very traditional, you have your bio, your physics, your chemistry class, we also have engineering classrooms that you can see the teachers have tried to have multi-use spaces, but it really looks like things that don't fit together in there. There's a lot of takeout and cleanup time that's lost because teachers are transitioning from their physics classroom into their engineering space, and now have to take all of this stuff back out. And that includes 3D printers, items that they're using. So we have open spaces that we're trying to use or to make, like our second floor of our library, where we are trying to create a maker space that our science teachers can take their classes down. That's a little bit more open and easily to use. But again, you're talking about loss of instructional time and travel time for kids and teachers.
Including our trainers that we have in electrical. I mean, the space is only, there's no access to the sun, so we have to literally take the trainer out, go outside, set it up, and that's a whole day just to set it up. But we have to do a teaching lesson.
So you have the technical things from the classes and the courses and the electives that we're teaching that are in our program of studies, but then we also have the athletic piece in our field house, which we didn't tour. Everybody had said, look, we have a floor that can't be dug into, and you can't hold tournaments because of the material that the floor has been made out of. So it's still very slippery. And those are huge upgrades, as well as a back gym that so you got the heat online last year. It's stayed online, fortunately, for us.
Yeah, never say that out loud.
Yeah. But we have essentially a facility that's way outdated and doesn't really provide the needs of our athletes, of our PE classes. That the course, even our program of studies in PE, we're not able to do the things that we want to do easily. We're making it happen. We have really creative staff that go above and beyond, but they shouldn't have to make things work the way they are.
Just touching on the PE, we have two outdoor fields to the right of the building, which have no outdoor lighting. They're just regular grass, and they're not turf or anything like that. But most importantly, they're not ADA accessible, so they're not available for everyone to use. And again, more importantly, you can't use them at night because there's no light.
I will say one thing. You can start an aerospace program, because the size of your hallways, the size of the hallways, they're massive. Holy cow.
I'll look into the feasibility.
I just have a question. So we both were talking about use of space, how many people you can cram into a space, moving things in and out. But Margaret, have you had any situations where because the infrastructure is failing in some parts of the building, have you had any situations where you haven't been able to purchase certain equipment or machinery, or because you can't plug it in safely? I'm just wondering if it impacts that.
It's more space limitation, and then there is some equipment that I do have to make sure that we have the right power for. For example, carpentry, we're looking at doing an upgrade to our ventilation system. Not feasible right now, just because it does require a lot of more electrical front work to get it up and running. So there are certain limitations. I haven't gotten to any limitations when it comes to kids' training equipment, so I'm hopeful. But it's just space-wise, it's hard to get what we want.
Can I just build off of that question? In a newly, if we were gonna design the building aligned to our shops, which I hope we do, right? Because we've retrofitted spaces to be certain shop areas that were never intended for that purpose, right? What value would we gain from that with some of the spaces that were never intended to be like the medical assisting location, or even the culinary? Some of the culinary spaces were not initially supposed to be culinary spaces.
Right, so now that we actually have those programs, they don't really look at the space as not currently. Moving forward, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate, again, height and square footage to make sure it has the right square footage per pupil, and there are recommendations on that. So, I mean, currently the benefit to us having these programs in those places that we've kind of created is just being able to transfer that into the new program, into the new building.
But if we were to design, I mean, if we're planning for those programs in a brand new building, what value does that bring in terms of like equipment, in terms of ability to, you serve more kids, attract, more industry support, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so with appropriate spacing, you increase enrollment because you have more kids that are attracted to that environment, and then having an environment where you can bring in state-of-the-art technology, that you have the floor space to do so, again, it gets more kids interested. I mean, we all like new technology. If it's the new iPhone or the new piece of equipment that's coming in, they all like it. And we have a donated tire machine that came in, pre-used, but it's last year's model, and the kids got all excited and they can't wait to try it on. And we're already communicating with the electrical kids to go in and do the wiring to get the new equipment hooked up. So having the new equipment that's aligned with industry, brings more partners in because they're going to be wanting to partner with someone that has the infrastructure to carry out their training. So I think it brings a lot of value to the building.
It prepares the kids for success. They're better. They're ready to use the equipment. They're ready to use the workforce.
In the workforce. I mean, currently carpentry, we're utilizing 1970s, 1980s equipment. I was a carpentry teacher in one of those programs myself. I know the deal. Most of that equipment, they're never going to use. I was in construction for 15 years. I didn't know what a thickness planer or a lathe was until I started teaching. You don't do that in residential construction, but it's something that I'm limited to. I can't really do that in space because my house would only be about 6 foot tall. So I'm not quite capable of doing that.
It's also movement, the way that the kids move. So you look at our medical assisting lab, it has many of the bells and whistles that you want, but it's all in the hallway style work. Kids are literally on top of each other, which limits the amount of kids that you can have in a space without you worrying about being able to see them all, to coach them all. And some of the kids, they're going to be utilizing tools that they need supervision and they need coaching around. And just the way that the rooms are designed aren't always there because we put walls up to create classroom space and lab spaces, and we didn't have the ability or the flexibility to say, well, kids are going to need to travel this way, and we're going to have to create this much square footage over here for the beds. That just wasn't in the cards when we started designing all of these spaces.
You guys are all over the Black Cat downstairs. Now picture 18 ninth graders that are excited to go into culinary in that space. Now, not only is there 18 kids in that space, but now we gotta share the space. We gotta move this kid between the restaurant, the kitchen, and the classroom. And there is no way to do so unless they go out, which means if a teacher doesn't go out with that student could go into the classroom, could go to the next classroom, could go to the gym. But it creates a lot of blind spots that currently the way we have it.
I don't want to be anywhere with that many ninth graders. No, but I would imagine too that once, you know, if we're making the argument for having our CTE spaces be a little bit more robust and flexible spaces, I would imagine that also helps with overall scheduling, because we're trying to get all of our kids to get a taste of what this is. But I think as the conversation goes on, it would really benefit us from a messaging standpoint to talk about interdisciplinarity, you know, where you see, you know, biology intersecting with biomedical, and where you see, even like thinking really creatively about how you see the humanities intersecting with our CTE programs, because it makes our college-bound kids so much more attractive, because interdisciplinarity is the name of the game in higher education, and so everybody's going to be asked to have double major, minor, have a concentration, make their own major, and if we have kids who can see the intersections between their sort of traditional math, science, humanities classes and their CTE programming, that makes us so much more unique than an Essex Tech. You know, that like we see the intersections and we see, like, you can market interdisciplinarity in a way that other schools just can't.
So I know everybody's really excited for the program of studies that's coming out in a couple months, and we've got reading material, but that's exactly what we're trying to do, is label for our families, like these are the courses that go along with this pathway. And currently right now, just because of the design of the school and how the programs have they've been designed over time, they're all over the building. So when you go into medical assisting, the Annotage tables are over in this side of the building, your AP science classes, and many of your Project Lead the Way, biomed classes, biotech classes, are all the way on the other side of the building. And those teachers don't really get all that much time to talk, and they're not gonna pass each other just by happenstance in the hallway, because they are in different parts of our facility. And that's one of the things that we're working on, A, in our program of studies, linking those so people can see the visual, just like you're talking, and then B, providing time where those teachers can collaborate moving forward, so that they know what's happening in CTE as well as in the Project Lead the Way courses.
That's great. Time and space for teachers too. I think thinking about that, you know, not a maker space for teachers, but you know, if we want our kids to be interdisciplinary and we want to be thinking more creatively and broadly, we have to give them physical space to have those interactions as well, rather than just the hallways.
I know you don't get necessarily reimbursed on the community health clinic and some other things, but obviously could be potentially worked into the overall plans. But I think it's important to stress those community elements. I think, you know, definitely we love the library in Salem, but it's got like a YA section that's like a half a shelf. So there's, you know, opportunities for the auditorium. There's not a great auditorium for the public. We were talking about Maker's Lab so that sort of thinking about this new facility, whether it's major renovation, half renovation, or a new building, having better community presence. And I think Paul brought it up. I remember this really hides from Salem, tucks away, and there's so many great things going on here, and more could be going on here. And we really want to bring the students forward and the staff and everyone forward, and not hide them from the community and bring the community here. And that's kind of a visual thing, and it's sort of engaging, but also like where we put things in the facility, you know. I mean, I feel like you come here and it'd be like really hard if you're a community member. You would get lost, right? You know, it doesn't like invite you in easily. The front is okay, but then you get buried. So I think that's an important part of this, even if we don't necessarily get reimbursed the same way. I think that part of getting the community support is going to be that connection.
It is. We want the high school to be the hub. We've seen increases in all of our programs, and it's not just because kids are signing up because they think they're really cool. It's also because we have high family engagement, and families are really pushing their kids to take advantage of some of the clubs, the athletics, that are happening here. But we've also had the community coming in through the CTI program.
Yep. Career Tech Initiative, we have a night program to do Career Tech Ed training for adults. And we're trying to target that for our graduating class of those students that didn't take a CT program because they couldn't fit into their schedule and miss the opportunity. They can now take a night training program. So we're opening up more opportunities for the community to come in and do things.
Our teen health center, I mean, like I told you, I've been here late at night and have a new lab driver come and reach out and where are the lab, like I have to pick up all of these vials, where are they? And that's tucked away way in the back because it's not a building that's set up for all of the things that we are doing. When you saw the teen health center, you could tell like there's no privacy in that room, but yet that's one of the spaces that has more foot traffic from outside of our school than any other part of the building, through our kids that are just coming in and new students, or their family members that are coming in and just need some advice or to get connected to outside resources. So it is really important to us that we are the hub for a lot of our families. We do have her office is right there on the second floor, our family engagement specialist, and she's working all day, like connecting with families and making sure our families have what they need. But I've seen in the last couple of years a huge increase of parents that are coming in here for a variety of different supports, and we want to make sure that they have a safe, welcoming space. And like you said, like you walk in our building, it does look nice, but in order for you to get to a conference room or a place where you can sit down and relax and talk to somebody, it is not going to be in that front lobby. You have to walk in, even from a safety standpoint. Like we just installed new glass doors and the partition. Otherwise, people have to come right into the building before you even knew why they were here. But there's no like safe, welcoming place for families until they get down the hallway, either to the main office or they come upstairs to C3. So to get to our guidance department, meet a guidance counselor, which is where all new students are going to come, all new families are welcome. You're going up to the 3rd floor. That is, walking up those stairs your first time in the building is not what you want to be doing. Okay.
Are there any programs that you had to press pause because of lack of space or equipment?
Yeah,
You'd like to resume?
We still have the carpentry program, but the things we want to do in the carpentry program, we weren't able to do. The electrical program, we've made the best of it.
Yeah, we took over that space and we kind of created it into a lab, but before it was just a small classroom area.
Our biotech lab space is not, our science labs are not made for up to industry specs, and we didn't talk about that in our next lab modernization grant, rebuilding out 2 of our labs to really meet the specs of what kids are going to see at the next level in college. So it's not that we do hit pause, we do not end. We figure out a new way to go about it, look at grants. Z's been really helpful in making things work and telling us what we can do and what's going to have asbestos and that's not feasible because of the cost. But we've made a lot of things happen, but it does take, a project that should take a week might end up now 6 months.
Any other questions, comments?
Any reflections from people around the room? I'm curious. Can I share?
Absolutely.
So
You're the mayor.
So that's when you brought up the safety thing. I think that was foremost in my mind. Obviously, the space is not being suitable for the programs that are the most demanded, music, CTE. And the other thing is just this failure of the systems in the building, like the inability to provide reliable electricity, heat, cooling. Like it's just to the point where it's equipment that can no longer be prepared or continue to operate. That just speaks to, I think, the ineffectiveness of this building to serve our needs for our kids. I hadn't been down there before for that close a look at it, so I appreciated that, I guess. The life safety, right, so thinking about, I mean, all the glass is great for light coming in, but, you know, from like a safety standpoint, it also provides a lot of, you know, lines of sight into the classrooms.
Mayor, might be a good idea to ask a real-life teacher, Lori, can I put you on the spot, about your experiences with
How's your
heating
classroom?
and cooling, and what your experience has been for, what, 20 years, more than 20 years, Lori?
Don't.
I'm sorry.
My first year was 2006 in Salem, the total will be 25 years. My classroom, I'm in room 105, and I want to say there is heat, there is no heat. There's no heat. The classroom gets incredibly cold. The heat kicks on around like 7:10 in the morning, whatever the timer is set on, blows heat for maybe 10 minutes, and then it blows cold air all day until around 2:10, maybe 2:15. Again, it's also on a timer, and then it shuts it off. In the summer, it's so humid and miserable. There's no air flowing through. I have heaters in my room because it's so cold in my space that it's really hard for the kids to focus. I have anywhere from 24 to 30 kids in my room at a time. And so my room is sort of small, so when I have all my desks set up, I would love to pull the desks away from where the register is for the heating and cooling, but I can't because there's nowhere to put them. And so the kids, I have blankets for students that sit near there so that they can try to stay warm. Yeah, the classroom space, I mean, again, I'm a history teacher, but it just doesn't, it's not very conducive to learning in general. The lights are old, they flicker, the lights in my hallway are completely dark right now. In my bedroom hallway over here, but the heating and cooling is a huge issue. This part over here, the newer heating system, you know, and I've been in that room now for, I don't even know how long I've been, because they moved me around a lot. And this space I've been in is the longest I've ever been in a classroom. And like I said, the winter is the worst. I wear my coat all day. The kids come in, they wear their coats all day. It depends on, some rooms apparently are really warm, some rooms are not. Some are too hot, some are too cold. But it's tough for our kids. Like, it's what I'll tolerate it because I'm an adult. I shouldn't have to tolerate it.
You're from Chicago too.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago. I'm used to the cold, okay? Midwest girl. But it's one thing because I'm an adult and I tolerate it, but it's another thing for our kids to have to come into this building and have these different temperatures depending on what rooms they're in. It's not right, it's not fair to them. It is not fair.
It's taking away the focus from learning there.
Absolutely, it totally is.
Especially when a lot of our kids already have that issue.
Correct.
They don't have safe heat at home or food.
Yeah, safety,
And to not
heat, yeah.
be able to come to an environment to learn and have a safe, welcoming environment, it's hard.
I mean, I create a welcoming environment, right? I decorate, those of you that are in my room is all decorated. The kids love being in my room. They don't like it when it's cold or it's too hot, obviously, but it's a struggle for a lot of them. I know it is because they told me.
So I think we're going to end, but just keep that picture in your mind of what Lori just said. We're going to end on that. It's not the best note to end on, but it certainly paints a picture that's not pretty.
Get Lori more blankets, I think that was
Exactly. I'm going to start learning how to crochet. About 3 years. All righty. We're going to move on to bond order process, and the mayor's going to give us an update.
The city council approved the bond order for the feasibility study, the full $2 million, so that's
How much?
$2 million.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. Great presentation.
Good job.
Yeah.
It's always good when it's just approved.
I know, I want to actually also say
Yeah, please.
thank you, Nate, Rick, Steve, anyone who reached out to counselors, really appreciated it. We came to the annual budget committee, or the administration finance committee, the city council, to answer questions and do a short presentation about this process. I thought they asked fine questions, and hopefully they were all addressed.
Good, okay. Enrollment certification, that's been done, we're just waiting to hear back, is that what I understand from, where are we with that?
Yeah, that's a good transition for Lisa's updates, right, Lisa? We are, well, we haven't been certified yet about what the enrollment is. We should be hearing in a matter of days and weeks. They asked us for more information.
And that's DESI, who certifies that?
Well, the MSBA is, yeah, and they had asked us for more information about our Chapter 74 CT programs. But we have to get, a letter will be sent to myself, the mayor, and I think you may have to sign, Beth Ann, because as the school committee rep on this building committee, so the three of us have to sign off on what the enrollment certification is, and then we will be invited to a meeting. The mayor, myself, will be invited to a meeting with the MSBA board to officially move us out of eligibility into feasibility. So that's a big step. I mean, this is like somebody said to me, this is step 3 of 800. It is a big step to move out of the initial phase and into the second phase of feasibility. But that will not officially happen until the board, MSBA board meets, and we hope that that will happen in we'll be invited to come in February to their.
But DESI has no, they don't.
Yeah, DESI's involved in it as well. When Glenn and I and Mario met with, and Elizabeth I think was there, we made the case for as big a building as we possibly can. We showed all kinds of, we brought all the stops out, that our enrollment is up. Our enrollment is up at the high school, but we tried to make the case as much as possible that there's the shiny ball idea that people are going to come to the new school when it's built, and so we'll see what they come back to. They have an enrollment figure for 9 to 12, and they also have an enrollment figure for 7 to 12, because those are the two models that we're proposing. So they're going to come back with a proposed enrollment for those two options. Lisa, go ahead.
You just did both.
Did I just do your job? Sorry about that.
Just did both slides, all caught up. I also included the slides in the agenda, so everybody has to. Thank you, Steve. But we were going to have Mario give an update on the Chapter 74 and the 2.
Yeah, Mario, do you want to just talk about
that last, coming down to the last 2?
Yeah. So as part of the feasibility study, we were looking at what other programs we can bring into Salem High School. Any biomedical, HVAC, plumbing.
Aerospace?
We hadn't thought about that, but maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. A couple of different high demand, high need programs, metal fabrication, HVAC, advanced manufacturing, and we put out to the community, both students, staff, and business partners. There was some disagreement, but overall, the top 3 were HVAC, metal fabrication and welding, and biomedical. We had told them that we were looking at an additional 2. Again, that has to stay within no more than 2 just because of our enrollment. We don't really have the enrollment to have more than an additional 2 programs. So looking at those 3 programs, we kind of wanted to see what would be best aligned to our region and what we're looking forward to doing going forward. HVAC, although a high demand, high need, it is a very hard field for finding teachers. Having been on the other side, looking to get HVAC teachers for a new program when we opened it in Somerville, it took about 3 years to hire that teacher. It's a revolving door. Our people up on the hill at Essex, they're looking for another HVAC teacher. That's the 3rd one in 2 years. It's not there. Metal fabrication, we have a good candidate pool. There's been a lot of teacher testing, so I know that there's a lot of teachers coming down the pipe. It's why the teachers do come into that field, because they get to a certain age, kind of like myself. We want to get out of construction, we don't want to be up on the high structures, and they go into teaching. With metal fabrication, we can really leverage offshore wind. That is the highest demand industry for offshore is welding. They have to be able to do cylindrical welding. And so we're looking at bringing in welding to kind of tie in with our marine service and pathway into offshore wind. And then the other one is biomedical. We already have it as a pathway through Project Lead the Way. We're bringing it in as a biomedical and manufacturing as well. So we can kind of cover both components. So the two programs we're looking to bring on board as Chapter 74 are biomedical and metal fabrication and welding. And that is in addition to the two programs that we are currently going for Chapter 74 this year, which is our programming and web, where you guys saw the nice computers and chairs, and then our carpentry program. I am confident we will get the Chapter 74 for programming and web. I think we'll be fine with carpentry. I am a little hesitant because of the ceiling space. Those conversations we had with the safety coordinator for DESI, and he doesn't see that being an issue, especially where we do have conversations like this for a new building. So that's where we stand with the feasibility for Chapter 74 programs.
So just to build on that, so we now have turned everything in to the department, to the MSBA. We're just waiting to hear back about the final certification. To be clear, we have agreed that they're going to look at 7 to 12 configuration and a 9 to 12 configuration. And so when we enter into the feasibility, that will be the two things that they look at, and that this committee will have an opportunity to review. As soon as we go in front of the board and they vote to move us out of eligibility into feasibility, that begins the process of selecting a project manager for this project. And Rick was unable to be here. He had a family emergency this evening, but he has graciously agreed to chair the subcommittee around the selection of an OPM. And there's a list of folks who have already volunteered, a subgroup of all of you who are excited about selecting an OPM. Some people get jazzed up about that. I may not be one of them, but Rick will be reaching out, I think, to the folks on this list. If you're interested, I guess, in participating, you can still reach out to Lisa or Rick, but he will be reaching out to you to schedule times to meet. They'll want to review our posting or our request for proposals, but we really can't do that until we're invited into feasibility, hopefully in February, but we're just trying to get all our ducks in a row so we're prepared to jump on it and to bring an OPM on board as soon as possible. Lisa, did I leave anything out there, or?
Nope.
Or Anthony, I know you're.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. So that's the OPM update, and I know Rick will be reaching out to the folks that are on this list who have volunteered their time.
Thanks. I had any questions on that? Good. And at our last meeting, we were talking about working groups or subcommittees, and we made mention of a communications group. This is a pretty big deal. You all know that, of course. That's why we're here. And so, if we want to garner support community-wide, having a communications subcommittee would definitely be the way to go. And so we have a communications director.
Yes,
right?
we do. Yep.
Who can help move us in the right direction. But we're also looking for folks who'd be interested in serving in that committee, which is basically getting the word out to the community why this is such an important initiative. And so I'd be more than happy to serve on that committee. And if you are interested, you don't have to necessarily let us know today, but you can just direct an email to Lisa. And then once we get, those names, and I'll convene the first meeting. I don't necessarily, I'm not looking to chair it, but I'll certainly convene the first meeting. And if anyone's interested in chairing that committee, because we probably should get to work on that pretty soon, because again, this is a pretty exciting opportunity for the city, so we want to capitalize as early as we can. So again, any interest, just email Lisa. Okay. All right, we're rolling. That's it. Next meeting, Thursday, January 18th. Any last minute comments? Glenn, Mario, Z, Steve, Mayor, Lisa.
Thank you all for coming and, checking out the building and for giving your input. Having worked here now for 3 years in the district for 10, as Mr. Bryant said, this is a big opportunity for our kids and for our families to have access to state-of-the-art materials that can inspire them to start dreaming bigger about their future and what they want to do at the next level. It's coming at a perfect time. Timing's everything. Over 30% of our kids, our seniors, currently hit early action, applying to college, and that's a big deal. And as they start seeing more of what's available out there right here in Salem, I only see that number growing.
Go ahead.
I just have one other thing to add before you close. I did want to note that Peabody just got into the pipeline. They're a year behind us. Yeah, they want to be Salem. I will tell you, it is an interesting opportunity for us to collaborate with them around the CTE spaces. And Mario and I already have had conversations with the superintendent, the CTE director, and the Department of Education. Because there's a, Essex Tech, the demand to get into Essex Tech in the region is so high. The wait lists are, extraordinary. And there's a high demand from a lot of North Shore communities to have access to the programming that we are one of the few high schools that has any of it, and Peabody's another one. And so the idea that the two of us would have state-of-the-art facilities would be an opportunity for us to think regionally about how to be thoughtful about what we offer. And so we want to work with them. And then obviously we already take students from Beverly right now who come for our programs. But for us I think that could be a real boon for Salem, but really for the region. If we think, if Peabody offers certain programs, we offer certain programs. So we want that's going to be part of the discussion here, given that now they're in the pipeline as well. Of course, our high school is going to be more beautiful. And it's going to be, we're going to be the flagship, not them. But we do want to hold hands with our partners, and we do have a good relationship with them. So we want to make sure that there's dialogue back and forth. So just stay tuned, and you're going to hear more about that. I also want to plug that the award-winning Steve Zreich show on SATV just last month featured these folks, Mr. Bryant, Mr. Jones, who's not here, a lot of guys with no hair, including myself, and Pengala, who might have the most hair. And we talked about the building committee, the building project. So check out the episode of the more recent episode that it's now on the site that we've created for the building committee. But it's a way to promote to the public, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and I thought it came out all right.
All right. Any last minute questions? If not, motion to adjourn. Second? All those in favor? All right. Thanks, everyone. Look forward to seeing you in January. Happy holidays.